Welcome everyone to another episode of Let's Be Mindful. Y'all, today I got a special treat. I have someone on this show. His name is Gunnar Lindbloom. And I came across Gunnar because I listened to one of his episodes that he did. What was it? True crime stories, right? It was an episode about his life, and I found his life extremely intriguing. And I wanted him to come on Let's Be Mindful so that we can talk about finding love in a very unlikely place. So, Gunnar, if you don't mind, if you could introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Gunnar Lindbloom. My full name is Alan Alonzo Gunnar Lindbloom, but I grew up. My mother was 100% Sicilian, so I grew up in a Sicilian home. So it's kind of confusing when people get to know my story. They're like, "Hey, your name's not Italian," but you'll figure out. You'll understand in a minute. So my old life, people called me Al. Everybody knew me as Al, but when I kind of decided to change my life in and out, mindset, everything, began writing my books, things like that, I decided to go with my middle name, Gunnar, my real middle name, because it's more memorable, and plus I kind of wanted to separate myself from the old me. So that's why everybody calls me Gunnar now. But nobody calls me Al anymore, except friends from the old neighborhood back in the day, which are few and far between. So I grew up in outside Detroit in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and St. Clair Shores, Michigan. Kind of an upper middle class, or well, Grosse Pointe's an upper class kind of enclave of wealthy, well-to-do people. My parents, though, this is where the dysfunction begins, because my father was an abusive alcoholic who beat my mother, and my mom was mentally ill, manic depressive, had nervous breakdowns. When I was 4 years old, they divorced, and I moved in with my grandparents in Grosse Pointe, and I was put in a pretty bad environment. Not like traditionally like you'd think is a bad environment, because I went from a bad environment. But the problem is my grandfather, Peter Paul Tocco, was the cousin of Giacomo Jack Tocco, who was the boss of the Detroit Mafia. And they were around the same age. They lived in the same neighborhood. Basically, the entire hierarchy of the Detroit Mafia lived within like a mile radius, right? And this very wealthy enclave. And they all grew up together from basically childhood all the way up. Same school, same everything. They all own businesses in the same part of Detroit, in the eastern market of Detroit, kind of like Detroit's little Italy. They did everything together, from family functions to church and everything. So they're very intertwined, this whole family, this mafia family, right? And I was around it. I kind of was aware of it when I was young. Like some girl said you couldn't, when I was 5 years old or 6 years old, some girl said she couldn't invite me to her birthday party because I was in the mafia. I didn't even know what that was, but my uncle said, don't worry, you'll find out someday. Now, my Uncle Pete was 12 years older than me, so he's more like an older brother. He was the guy who kind of started mentoring me and brought me in, like, got me to believe as a young man that that type of lifestyle was not only okay in our family, but it was encouraged. Now, I'd been around this whole world with the mafia coming and going, men coming and going, all my whole life, basically, since I was like
Mm-hmm.
age 4 till like I was 11. And I was kind of used to it. It wasn't a big deal. I saw how people treated my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, my uncles. It was different. They wouldn't take my money at the store, at the corner store. Like, they'd just give me it. Like, here you go. Tell your papa I said hi. I started selling drugs because I was starving. My dad didn't buy food. He gave me one meal a day. So at 15 years old, I was expected to wait till 8 o'clock at night to eat one meal. He gave, maybe have some crackers or something during the day. And keep in mind, again, by this time I got about 8 felonies. I got caught with some pipe bombs. Another mob guy paid me $3,000 to blow up a nightclub that was competing with his nightclub. So before I could do that, the cops happened to pull me over back in that panic zone where I talked about, there to drop off my boy and pick up some money. Cops pulled me over. I got a limousine tinted black Mustang GT with tinted windows. A car full of my boys, got the kickers bumping, boom, boom. Cops see me, pull me over. I go to get my license, and the bombs are in the glove box. So they're like, "Yeah, you're under arrest, whatever." And I don't get in that case. I got I can't remember. I was in jail for 2 weeks before I bonded out, but that was my first real jail time. I was only 17. Then I finally beat the steroid case. My grandfather bribed the judge, paid him 10 grand to not let me in prison, keep me out of prison. He was a Sicilian guy. His name was Judge Jeanette, but his real name was Judge Genetti. And he had changed his name from Genetti to Jeanette so people wouldn't have the connotation that he's connected to the mob. The main thing that turned the corner for me was when Tony Jack called me one morning when I was living with my grandparents still. There was a girl that he said was a friend. I'm assuming it was one of his girlfriends. Anyways, he calls me and says, I need a favor. And I'm like, what's up? 7 o'clock in the morning. He calls my house. My grandmother yells in the basement. She's like, Alonzo, phone. I'm like, who's on the phone at 7 o'clock in the morning? She's like, Tony. I said, Tony who? I got like 5 cousins named Tony. She's like, Tony Jack. She said it like, Tony Jack. Like, she don't like Tony. So I pick up the phone and wait for my grandma to hang up. I'm like, what's up, Tony? He's like, listen, I need a favor. What's up? He's like, I got this problem. What's the problem? It's like, this guy showed up drunk last night at this girl's house, slapped her around, and then he's passed out, and he's still there passed out. Can you handle it? I said, yeah, I can handle it. He's like, you sure you can handle it? I said, yeah, Tony, I got you. I know what he's asking. So I'm like, yeah, give me the address. The girl only lived like a couple of miles from me, like 3 miles from me. And then I went in there, and I really was just going to throw the guy out and just kind of say, hey, you got to go. But he got tough. He basically says, who the F are you? He passed out. I bang on a wall like, wait, time to go, mother effer. And he looks up and goes, who the F are you, punk or kid? Who the F are you, kid? I said, I'm the boogeyman, mother effer. It's time to go. And he goes, get the F out of here. And he rolls over. He's a big old guy, too, bigger than me. Guy was like 30 years old. I grabbed him by the hair. I was just going to yank him out, but he starts swinging on me, so I just pulverized him. And I beat him up real bad, like, smashed him, blood all over the place, and then splattered him, and I drag him out of the house by his hair and say, frick out of here. You come back, do this again. You end up in a body bag, mother effer. You're messing with the wrong people. And so she called Tony and told him what I did, and Tony was clearly impressed. So over the next several years, he would call me occasionally and say, listen, I got a problem, or a friend of mine has a problem, or my friend of mine has some work. But I mean, basically, if you throw out any racket that there was to be, criminally was, from bank robbery to extortion to larceny rings to chop shops to yacht thefts rings, it's on and on and on. I was involved in all of it, and I wasn't like the mastermind most of the time. I was just a guy that was involved, and I made some money. I was living way beyond my means, man. I had just bought my second house. I had a bunch of cars and toys and, all this stuff. And I started extorting a lot of people. I started extorting this chop shop that I was bringing stolen cars, had guys bringing stolen cars. I started extorting drug dealers. I started extorting pimps. Now I'm kicking in doors in the hood, wearing a DEA jacket and a shotgun and get on the ground, zip tie him, grabbing all the dope, the money and guns. So I was a lunatic towards the end. And then, eventually, I got arrested after I robbed the bank. I got in a high-speed chase that ended up in a crash, and I got out and ran. And a bunch of cops caught me and beat me half to death. And off to prison I go. I ended up spending – this is where the story gets interesting. And I ended up in the county jail fighting my case on a $5 million bond for 17 charges, 17 capital crimes that carried up to life, 0 to life in prison. I ended up in the hole, solitary confinement. After I got in a fight, kind of shattered some dude's orbital socket who stole a pie out of my box when I was at church. And so they put me in a hole for 30 days. But then when I was coming back from court, I got into it with the cops, the officers, the deputies. And they ended up macing me and tasering me and beating my ass real bad. I ended up having to get stitches, whatever. And it was at that moment, after they beat me up, I'm sitting in my cell. They brought me back to my cell, uncuffed me. I'm out of breath, and blood's dripping off my head. I'm like, just kicked the crap out of me. 5 cops. They cuffed me. I've been tasered. I've been maced. Then I'm sitting there on the edge of my bunk and just can barely catch my breath. Blood's dripping off my face onto the floor. And I said, man, this ain't the life, man. This ain't the life for me. This is not the life that I want. Things didn't work out, man. Like this. I literally said, I can't get any lower than this. This is as low as a human can get right now, right here. And I said, it's probably better that they wanted to give me 30 years. The lawyer was saying they're going to try to give you 30 years. I'm like, I'm not doing 30 years in prison, man. It's just better off if I kill myself. You know what I'm saying? It's just easy. I'm not doing 30 years waiting. I get out. I'm old, man. I got no family or no friends, no money, no nothing. What's the point? You know what I'm saying? 30 freaking years. I just slip my wrist in the shower and check out. Not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? I didn't rat. I didn't, disgrace anybody. And there was a divine moment of, I remember, I don't like saying it. It's almost like it's not real, but a voice in my head said there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember looking down the hall and things blacked out and there was a little pin dot of light. So down the hall, it was all dark, but this is during the day. So it's really weird. It was a blackout and I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I knew that light was 13 years away. Or years away. I didn't know how many years, but I knew it was many years away. But there is a light, so there is hope. And then I said, well, it's like well, what am I going to do? Before they brought me back to my cell, they took all my pictures and all my mail and they dumped it on my bed and then dumped a 5-gallon bucket of mop water over the bed to soak my bed and ruin my pictures and stuff, just to be douchebags. So I picked them up and like dried them off a little bit. I didn't want to I try to wipe them off. And I'm looking at these letters from my grandparents. And on one of the visits from my grandparents, my grandmother said, "You write the most beautiful letters. You could be a writer." She's like, "Grandpa reads those letters 3 or 4 times. He loves your letters. You're such a beautiful writer. Maybe you should try to be a writer." And I'm like, and I remember when I was looking at them and I'm sitting there and I look over at these books on my desk that I'd been reading. And I remember thinking to myself, these books aren't that good. Like, these are the best writers in the world. And I go, you know what? Every one of them I read, I thought, dude, they were good, but they could have been better. I could do better. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start writing books. And immediately I knew what I was supposed to do. So just at that moment, I knew that I was supposed to be a writer, and I knew that's how I was going to survive prison. And it just clicked. I just knew. There was not a doubt in my mind. So what I did for the next 14 months, I'd been in the hole for about a month at the time. So it would be about 16 months I did over the next 16 months.
Wait, was all 16 months in solitary confinement?
Yeah, yeah. And I wrote 3 novels in my mind. I wrote 3 stories, three novels. It took about 3 or 4 months per. So I'd write in my mind for 3 or 4 months, and then I'd go back to reading and say, this is what my next book's going to be about. So when the book cart came by once a week, I'd try to find some books that were kind of at least remotely associated with or close to the book that I wanted to write next in my mind. So I'd get some books, and over the next month, I'd spend a month reading like 5 or 6 books, right? And then after I'd read those 5 or 6 books to get my mind in that space, that realm, I'd sit back on my bunk like this and stare at the ceiling for the next 4 months. And I would write another book. I wrote To Be a King was one of the ones I wrote. I wrote 9 novels in prison. So I'd envision the story, start to finish. I'd begin to create how I wanted the opening scene, and I would move into the characters, and I'd move into the plot, the romantic interest, the conflict and resolution, all of it. It came very natural. Yeah, I know most writers can't wrap their mind around.
I have now, these may seem like odd questions, but I do have a couple of questions. From what you were saying, everything has happened. You have a fascinating story. And I think, I don't want to use the word glamorized, but I know that, like right now I'm watching the movie, the series. What's the one with Sylvester Stallone? What is it? Tulsa King?
Yeah, it's cheesy as hell. It's entertaining, but it's super cheesy. It's not realistic.
It is. I do like it, but
it's entertaining, but it's not real.
Okay. And so the other, you're from Detroit. Now this is a completely random question, and this is because I don't watch a lot of TV, but I did also watch this. I was wondering if there was any affiliation, ties, or dealings, or just with one is White Boy Rick and the Big Meech, the one they have a miniseries, because I do want to ask you about the miniseries that that your life has also inspired. So I was wondering, because you all are from Detroit and pretty much we're in the same career, wondering if there was any like ties.
So I'm friends with White Boy Rick. I talk to him, semi frequently. I've invited him up to come fishing. I had one encounter with him when I was in the street. I believe it was him. Somebody said it was him. His drug dealer before prison. His main plug was a guy named Art Derrick. Art Derrick had a son named Art Derrick Jr. He had a big party on Outer Drive in the city. I was about 15, and I remember going in to this big party and saw some kid in the basement like sell somebody some coke, right? And he pulled out a big knot of money, some white kid, a little white kid, probably 16, 17-year-old kid. But I was a tough guy. I was, so I told my boy, George, I said, I'm going to knock him out and take that money, and somebody says, don't do it. That black dude with him is his bodyguard, and he's probably got a gun. And so I didn't do it. And then a couple days later, somebody said, that was White Boy Rick. And I'm like, I didn't know that, but if it was, whatever, I'm glad I didn't do it. But, and then Big Meech, I just told this story funny yesterday to this producer in LA who loves my story, wants to see it adapted to a documentary, and also wants to adapt my my books to a film. And anyways, I was telling him how I did meet Big Meech one time, and that's just a fluke story. I was living in the city at the time in Detroit on 7 Mile or State Fair, which is 7.5 mile city proper. My neighborhood was pretty nice, but just about a mile away, you get into the really bad ghetto. There was a car wash down there, and I go there to like wash my bike off. I had a Ninja, a black motorcycle, and I go down there to wash it off. And there's a bunch of these black dudes always hanging out there. I assume they own it, and I assume they were drug dealers, because they all had big gold chains and dressed really nice, and they had badass motorcycles and badass cars, and they'd sit around this car wash all day. Because it's one of the cars you drove through, but it also had the spray stuff. And across the street, and I talked to the one guy who had a motorcycle just like mine. We basically had the same bikes, the black Ninja, black and chrome Ninja. His was 1,000, mine was a 900. And there was a liquor store across the street, and I got into a beef with the guy who owned the place because he wouldn't break my $100 bills. And so I was like, what the frick? I have every time I go there, all I got is hundreds because I sell weed, right? And people buy pounds of weed. They don't use 20s. They give you hundreds. So I got hundreds and hundreds. Now I go down there to buy something, and the guy won't take my 100. This is behind plexiglass. He's behind plexiglass, and there's that little turnaround, roundabout thing where you put your money in it, spin it around. They take your money, put change there, spin it around. It's this Arabic guy, and I'm pissed. I mean, guy's annoying the hell out of me. He won't take my money, so I threatened this. I said, one of these days, I'm gonna freaking wait for you to come outside and pop your ass. And he pulls out AK-47, right? And he lifts it up from under the. He's like, oh, that guy won't do. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I said, I got something for you, mother effer. I got something for you. So I had a grenade, a real grenade that I got from the Canadian military. A guy stole military armaments from Canada and sold them to somebody I knew, and he ended up giving me 2 of them, and I blew one up, and I kept the other one for a rainy day. So I went down there after we got in an argument, and I took this grenade. I said, I'll pull this pin in this grenade, put it in the thing, spin it around. Either you're going to bleed blown up or you're coming out, and I'm going to be waiting with this pistol. The old man, you got to talk to me with respect, mother effer, blah, blah, blah. And he was freaking out. No. He's from the Middle East, so he knows about freaking grenades and, crazies and suicide bombers and crap, right? So a couple days later, I go to the place across the street, the car wash, and a couple of these dudes say, hey, man, what's up with you and old man across the street? Now, this is, by the way, this is in a neighborhood. There are no white people at all. Zero. None. Only cops, but even them are rare. And I'm like ripping off with a big old chain and on a Ninja, like, and jumping up. What's up, fellas? And so they're like, right away, the respect level they had for me was off the charts because either this kid's crazy or he's a bad mother effer, one or the other. He's a gangster, and he's to be respected. So the guys come up and said, "Yo, the old man's son come over here and asked us to freaking have a talk with you because he saw that us talking and knows we know you." I'm like, what about? And he's like, yeah, he's scared. He thinks you're going to kill him. You're going to blow him up with a bomb and blah, 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 blah. And I'm laughing. They're like, and I say, I do what you do. And all I got is hundreds all the time. I reach in my pocket and I pull a knot out. I probably got $5,000 in hundreds. I said, bro, I do what you do. He won't break my hundreds. It's real money. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what his problem is. And he's laughing. He's like, you do what I do. Like, how do you know what we do? I said, come on, bro. I'm not an idiot. Just do the same thing. He's like, yeah, what do you do? I said, I sell weed. Whatever you do, but I sell weed. I'm a weed man. You need some pounds, I'm the guy. So anyways, I got to talking to these guys, and at some point in this conversation, the guy with the motorcycle, who I talk to the most, says, you want to go down the Belle Isle with us and go for a ride? Me and you would take the bikes down the Belle Isle, which is a big island in the Detroit River, downtown Detroit. It's a 3 square mile island, and it's just like it's a party. It's basically in the summertime, everybody goes there to barbecue, swim in the beach, and it's this big, huge party. It's a car show. Everybody's lined up along the road like for 2 miles. There's 100,000 people on the island. 100,000 are there just hanging out, but there's no white people. And so these black dudes are like, you want to go roll? I said, yeah. He's like, listen, me and you will take the bikes. My boys will follow us in the car. That was I thought it was just going to be us going on the bikes, going to go for a ride, maybe flirt with some girls, whatever. No, this guy's got this crew, like 7 guys. There's 7 guys with him. I'm gonna jump in a BMW and a Mustang, and they follow us. And we go on an island, and long story short, we're driving along, and it's just like a car show, so you're only doing like 3 miles an hour, kind of looking for somewhere to pull over. And I tell him, I said, bro, I gotta pee, I gotta pull over and pee, man. He's like, there's nowhere to go. We passed the bathrooms like a half a mile back, and it's a one way. You go all the way around the island again to get, which would take 20 minutes because it's so congested. I was like, I can't wait. I got to pee. I just pulled over, man. And he's like, where are you going to go? I'm like, I'm right by that tree over there. And these guys are all laughing. They're like, where's the white boy going? He's like, got to go pee. I walked over to this tree, and people barbecuing and people all around. I'm just peeing. You hear a whole crowd of people laughing. Everyone's just laughing. They're like, this freaking guy. I'm like, what do you want? I had to go, man. I was going to pee my pants. So as I come walking back, there's a bunch of girls, carload of convertible, the carload of black girls in there, and I flag them down. They pull over, and I'm flirting with them and macking on them or whatever. And some other car pulls by, a bunch of black dudes, and say something slick about me. They're like, F that white boy, whatever. And the guys with me are like, yo, he's with us, mother effers. And they're like, what's up? And they're like, what's up? And we end up getting a big high-speed chase, chasing them around the island, weaving out of the traffic, going up on the lawn. It's crazy. Went around. Eventually, the car that we were chasing went off the island, and we kept going because we wanted to stay because there was all these girls. And anyways, when I get back to where we were chilling, where we first started, the one guy goes, you know who that is, right? And he points to the guy with the motorcycle. I'm like, no. I mean, I think I knew his name was Meech at that point. I'm like, Meech? And they're like, it's Big Meech. And I'm like, I heard the name Big Meech. And I'm like, man, I've heard of Big Meech. I heard, she's a big drug dealer. That's all I knew. And the one guy had a chain. He pulls his chain up, and he's got this big plate that says BMF, Black Mafia Family. And so that would be the and there's a connection too, because Tony Giacalone, the guy I talked about earlier, he was the founder of Black Mafia Family. Essentially, he was the one who put Frank Nitty Usher in the game, and he's the one who kind of founded the Black Mafia Family, as far as I know, if I'm getting history correct. And then it spawned from Frank Nitty Usher into the Black Mafia Family, which spawned Big Meech, who became the biggest drug dealer in American history. And that's it. So that's my Big Meech story.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing. I like I said, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I do like. I watch that series. I really like that one. Now, do I like it better than Tulsa King? Yes, obviously. But
I've never seen either one. I have seen a little bit of Tulsa King, but I've never seen the BMF thing. Never watched it.
Oh, well, it's really good. You and I share a passion. One of my favorite pastimes is writing. Right. And so we do share that pastime. And I'm so glad to hear that
Oh, that's not my pastime. That's my full-time job.
That's your full-time job. That is your interest. And that was, it sounds like that was something that kept your sanity going while you were in solitary confinement, because I've heard solitary confinement can be, extremely, they do it for a reason, because we are humans and we need interaction, but you take that away, it's mentally damaging. And so you were able to, I guess, deal with that by being creative in your writing. And so I'm sure that had a lot to, a big help in your mental state, right? Your mental health, being able to close your eyes, or even, like you said, stare at the ceiling and write your books in your head. Do you think that was like a saving grace for you in solitary confinement?
Yeah, solitary. Well, it's more than solitary confinement. I wrote for 13 years in prison, so it's just all part of the same blur. But it did help me. So I'm a unique individual in the fact that I'm not going to break like most guys. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of guys will break and do what they tell you to do, or whatever they have to do to get out of the hole in solitary confinement. Some guys break, some guys don't. Some guys mentally snap and never recover. Some do. But it didn't bother me. I just worked out. And I wrote, and I just, prayed, whatever. Then when I got to prison, I got pen and paper, started writing. Eventually, after I wrote my third book, I ended up getting a typewriter and taught myself how to type. Matter of fact, the typewriter is right here. This is my prison typewriter right here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My friends are like, they're going to put that in the Smithsonian someday. So writing was my saving grace, and it was my great escape from prison. It was my mistress, was my typewriter, and it just kept me alive. It kept me focused. It gave me hope. It kept me determined for a better life, a greater purpose. It was my everything, And without it, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be in prison, or I would have been killed in prison, one or the other. But with writing, I was able to discover, and I had a very, very unique gift, People started reading my books in prison. There's a lot of big readers in prison, a lot of very prolific readers. that, you know, they've been down 10, 20, 30 years. All they do is read, you know, they've been read 10,000 books, 20,000 books. That's all they do. Then I hand them my book, the manuscript, you know, this big 1,000-page manuscript. And they come back in 2-3 days and go, dude, that's the best book I've ever read. Why are you in prison? Like, how did you end up in prison with that type of talent? You should be in Hollywood. That should be a movie. Why are you, what kind of idiot ends up in prison? And I said, hey, I was an idiot. I screwed up too. I mean, like anyone else. I didn't even know I had this talent till I came to prison. So, but then when you hear this once, it's nice. When you hear it 2 times, it's nice. When you hear it 10 times, it's nice. You hear it 20 times, it's like, okay, I'm onto something here. Everybody has the same. When you hear it 100 times, you know you got something. And so what ended up happening is I'd send my books home to my friend, a couple of my friends, to read and keep for me, right? Or send to my sister or whatever. And one of them read the books. And when I just finished my 6th novel, I was 6 years in the prison. I just finished my 6th novel, that book. It's the only book about a mafia family or mafia I've ever written. But I just happened to decide, okay, it's time to write this book. That's the book I wrote. One of the 3 I wrote in the whole was this story. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this one. I already wrote 5. I get to this one. I'll write this one now. So I sit down. It takes about a year working full time. It takes about a year working 12, 14 hours a day to write a book. For me, and in prison it did. 6 days a week. I took Sundays off usually. But so I just finished this, and my boy, this is in 2009. So my boy says, hey, you know what Facebook is? It's this new social media thing, and I'd seen it on TV. People talk about it on TV a little bit. And he's like, I'm going to start a Facebook page for you. It's, to try to connect you with some, old friends from the neighborhood, some girls, maybe, whatever. I was like, yeah, it'd be awesome. I'd love that. So he said, I'm going to post a couple sample chapters of your book, which he just read and loved. He's like, dude, this book's amazing. And he already read like 3 of them, so he loves them all. He's like, dude, super talented. And so he puts the sample chapters out there, puts on there, I'm a Christian, which was important. This has changed my life. But then I was a Christian, I was a writer, and I was in prison writing books and yada, yada, yada. Some pictures from my, before I went to prison that I had in there. I sent them, he posted them on there. And then some people started sending me fan mail. He said, if you want to contact the author, this is how you do it. Use something called JPay, which is prison email. And you pay like 25 cents to send, a paragraph or whatever to me, or a page to me, and they print it out and they hand it to me. So I started getting these fan mail from people going, dude, this book's amazing. You're the next Mario Puzo. That's who wrote The Godfather. They're like, dude, this is better than Mario Puzo. This is better than anything I've read. This blah, blah. And they don't even know. They only read like 4 chapters. They have no idea. Like, the story is so much more than what they've read. It's not even, they've literally, they're at 1% of the story, and they're all saying that. And then one day I get an email or a JPay from a chick that I'd never heard of before. And she says, you probably don't remember me, but I went to your, with the Lakeshore, which would have been my high school that I went to. I didn't. So you probably don't remember me. I was kind of a nerd. I was a book nerd. I was raised Muslim. My dad was a Muslim overlord. I couldn't go to parties or hang out or do anything like that. I didn't have nice clothes. I was kind of this quiet nerd. You wouldn't remember, but I do remember you. She's like, I remember only that you were a troublemaker, liked to fight, and were a drug dealer, supposedly. So when I looked on your Facebook and saw that you were in prison, I really wasn't surprised. But I see that you're a Christian. She's like, I'm a new Christian too. I converted to Christianity. And I see that you're a writer. Well, I work for a publisher in New York. She's like, I work in academic publishing, but I have friends who work in commercial fiction. I have friends who, might be interested in your book. So if you want to send me if you want to have somebody send me the PDF, I'll take a look at it, read it. If it's any good, I can forward it to some people in my company. I said, yeah. So I'm super excited. She sent the picture. She's a cute girl. And I'm super can't believe some girl works for a publisher in New York is interested in reading my book. So I have my friend, and I bugged one of my friends to turn my book into a PDF. It's kind of a big deal. It's an 1,100-page manuscript. It was both volumes of that book together. So originally it was all one story, one manuscript. And so they send it to her. She reads the book in 3 days on her phone, believe it or not, blows through the 1,100 pages on her phone, and then sends me a JPay email and says, this is, she says, you're a unicorn. This is the best book I've ever read. She's like, and originally she said, this is in the top 3 best books I've ever read. About 6 months later, she said, when I told you it was the best book I ever read, or top 3, I lied. It is the best book I've ever read, but I didn't want you thinking I was blowing up your head And like, you know, because I just met you, I didn't want you to think I'm just blowing smoke, so I put you in the top 3. But it definitely was the best book I ever read. I never had a book affect me so emotionally, so just affect me that way. Incredible story. You're a unicorn. Da da da. So I want to help you get it published. Let's work together. Da, 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 da. And so we started writing each other and getting to know each other. And it's pretty remarkable how we like really had all common interests. We had common, you know, our faith was the same. Our worldviews were the same. You know, everything was the same. She loved the outdoors. She loves animals. You know, she loved camping and hiking and, you know, just all the things that I enjoyed. It was kind of a weird clicky thing. Like, wow, what really clicked here? And then over maybe 3-4 months in, we were writing each other basically like 2-3 times a week. And then it was more than that. And it was every day. Then it got to where we were writing each other every day. And it was not, I set my 7th novel aside called The Lion Chaser. I was like 800 pages in this novel. I just set it aside and then I'm writing this girl for the next year, nonstop. We probably wrote on average about 50 pages a week to each other, which was pretty crazy.
Wait, now did she ever visit? Was there ever a visit in person? No.
No,
Okay.
not yet. No. So
Okay.
at one point we began, you know, when you're a writer and you can articulate your thoughts and your humor, your charm, your wit, your whatever, much better because you can slow down and think about what you're going to say. You can really kind of play with words. She was a writer too. She had a literary scholarship to go to I think Michigan State, but she didn't go because her dad wouldn't let her because she had 5 younger sisters and her dad made her stay home to take care of her sisters rather than go to college. She worked in the bookstore when she was in high school, so that's her book love. And anyways, she was a writer herself, so we had a lot of fun in wordplay, and it led to a little bit of flirting. And then I said at one point, I think we should stop the flirting. I think we need to draw a line, a painted line. Now remember, I said painted line. I draw a painted line because I think I got 6.5 years left in prison. I'm a loser. I got nothing going for me in life. You're a professional. You're free. You have your whole life ahead of you. You're 35. You're still beautiful. No kids. You got a good 6-figure job. Forget me. You know what I'm saying? We can't let this happen. You know, right? And she's like, I agree. You know, but like within a week, we're back to flirting, and then now we're really flirting. We crossed the painted line. Basically, we crossed that painted line, and then just within about a month or 6 weeks or something, she says, I think I got to tell you something that I think you already know, that I've fallen in love with you. And she's like, you know, how do you feel? I'm the same way. Well, what do we do with it? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, can you wait 6.5 years for me? I mean, if you can't faithfully, then forget it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not interested. But if you can, then I'll marry you. I said, we can get married now. And she said, wrote me back right away and says, I will marry you tomorrow and I'd wait 20 years for you. I believe you're worth it. So I said, all right, well, we decided to wait till I got out of prison to get married because it was just so cheesy to get married in a prison visiting room. But we got engaged, and then for the next 6.5 years, she supported me. We talked on the phone every day. She did come and visit me eventually after about a year. You know, my prison I was in was like 6 hours away from her. You know, 6-7 hours away. So it was a long, long ways. So she had to come up, and that was remarkable thing. But I almost passed out when I first saw her. I was so nervous, and I almost passed out. It was crazy. I was so nervous, and in the visiting room it was hot, like hyperventilating. I was lightheaded. It was crazy. But anyways, so she supported me for the next 6 years, and she said when you get out, and plus, you know, you have to imagine she's a normal chick who come from like the suburbs of Detroit. She had all these sisters and aunts and stuff, and she's like, listen, I'm dropping everything I know, selling the condo, moving up to the middle of nowhere. Because she asked me where you want to live when you get out. And I said, way up north, away from the city, away from people. I just want to go fishing, camping, hiking, four-wheeling. I want to get away. I want to be kind of close to my dad within an hour or so. My dad, he's an old man and he's all I got. And I wasn't close with my dad either, man. But now he's old. I've forgiven him for all the crap. I'm just like, whatever, man. You know, it is what it is. You're the only dad I got. So, and he had supported me a little bit. He sent me a couple bucks every month, $20, $30. He bought me my typewriter. So I wanted to be by him. So she tells her family I'm moving up north and I'm waiting for this ex-con in prison, this ex-gangster. They thought she was insane. They thought, you're out of your freaking mind. Some of them like stopped talking to her. for years and years. In fact, till after I got out and like a year or two went by and they saw that I wasn't a madman that was trying to kill her for the insurance money. They literally, some of them said, he's going to kill you for your insurance money, life insurance. I'm like, and so they saw how happy our life was. I got out. We post videos and pictures of our life. We have a very happy, fun life. We do a lot of fun stuff, and we have an amazing marriage. We have a lot of fun. We have an amazing life. So the day she waited till I got out, and then my boys picked me up, 4 of them at the prison, and then they took me to breakfast and gave me some gifts, including a new iPhone, and they just. I had a steak and eggs dinner or breakfast. Then they drove me north to my girl, who was 5 hours away, and who cooked me this massive feast, this huge feast. I should send you that picture. You can see us all standing in front of this feast. And then had a pretty sleepless night. I hadn't slept in weeks, really, to be honest with you. I was so nervous and anxious. Plus, I was worried that an old criminal case might pop up, and they'd try to, right when I was going to walk out, they'd say, nope, and then I was super nervous, man. I'd been involved in a lot of stuff, several shootings, you know what I'm saying? You just don't know how they turned out. You don't know if there's evidence, whatever. And so it was scary, and I couldn't sleep. Then I got home. I literally slept in the last 2 weeks, probably a total of like 10 hours, which is crazy. Yeah, I know. And then, of course, night 1, I didn't sleep at all. And then I went and worked out at 4 in the morning with my cousin. But the next day, I got cleaned up, went to the courthouse, this little town in the middle of nowhere, a town of like 2,000 people, and went to the courthouse, got married to my new wife, Maria. And then I went down to this real remote beach, super secluded wilderness area, this private beach. And my cousin baptized us in Lake Huron. It's a beautiful sunny day, like 90 degrees. The water is like turquoise bath water in like, Tahiti. And it looked like you could be in like, Fiji or something. And he baptized us, and because I wanted to be washed away of the old me, and the new me is here. And then we started our life. And then we've had a lot of fun for like 9 months, kind of honeymoon period, just camping and doing all kinds of fun. So I did a lot of fishing, salmon fishing, trout fishing, camping. And then I published my books, To Be a King, Volume 1 and 2, and they did pretty good. They did pretty good in the beginning. They really shot to the top of the genre, and people were saying, this guy wrote the next Godfather. This is the Godfather of our generation. This guy's the new Mario Puzo. Blah blah blah. At one point, I was in the top 30, and then Amazon gift suggestions had my book and the Godfather right next to each other, which I took screenshots just to prove that. But anyways, then I started Arthing Apparel, which is a clothing company I own. Arthing Apparel. It's custom to your city. So if you can see the back of it, I'm from Detroit, so mine says Arthing Detroit. But wherever you're from, it'll say your city. We do most of the major cities, not all the cities, but anything embroidered, like tracksuits and jackets and hoodies and things like that. We can put any city on there. But like, I'm from Detroit, so mine says Detroit Arthing. Anyways, I started that, and then started living my life and just trying to enjoy life, inspire other people. I ended up on a radio show. I had my own radio show for 2.5 years, and looks like I'm going to be starting in a new market in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. So I'll have another radio show in Atlanta soon. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, my people, I see a lot of these dating shows, and they're always talking about how, they from the perspective of young men, how they see women and how they value women, and for yourself as a middle-aged woman, I feel like the middle-aged women really get the short end of the stick these days because men are devalue women, when they're past 30, they're like, God, geez, they're worthless. I don't care how much money you make. What do you care? I don't, what I'm saying? I don't care if you're, making $1 million a year. What do I care? You're still an old lady. And the young guys won't get it until they're older, until the day they get sick or get hurt or they go bankrupt and they lose all their money. You see what I'm saying? So when calamity happens, that hot little 24-year-old girl that you think is the most greatest thing in the world, she gone. Second you have calamity, she's gone. Now what you got? Now that older woman, mature woman, who you actually fell in love with and loves you, is going to be there to support you, whether you have money or not. When you're sick, she's going to be there to change your freaking diaper. Whatever it is, that's the woman you want long term as a partner. When you're young, you're stupid. You think, this is what I want. I want a hot, perky young girl. She's between 18 and 23. Over than that, she's over the hill. And okay, dude, you'll see. Keep that in mind when you're 40 years old and you catch cancer, and you got to go through chemotherapy for a year and surgeries and all that. Watch how
Mhm.
fast that 23-year-old is gone. She's
She'll be
gone.
gone.
And
Well,
even
you
if
know,
you
one
do,
thing one
if
thing
you
they
pay
say
her to
about
stay
like
around, even if you
hmm?
pay her to stay around, she's going to be sleeping with another dude on the side. So you're just paying her. You're basically just a simp. You're basically just paying for a high price hooker at that point. You know what I'm saying? She's gonna, while you're in your hospital bed, paying her car note and her all of her bills, giving her a credit card to spend. She's at the club banging 25-year-old dudes. So I mean,
Yeah, you know, the thing about that type of relationship, if and this is fact, I'm not making it up. Like if a man is dating a woman purely for her looks, her appearances, things
oh,
that, you know, that are, there's no emotional intimacy, there's no
right.
connection. He's dating her because she looks good, her
Oh,
boobs are still up here and not
yeah,
down
yeah,
here,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
She's dating him because he has money. There's
Right.
no connection there. So
No.
she's using him, he's using her. They're both cheating. I mean, that's just, don't be surprised. Like, I mean, if you
Yeah,
didn't base the relationship on anything, what did
yeah.
you
Any
expect?
substance.
Yeah, that's
Let,
how
let
it's
me
going to
just
be.
tell you this. When I was young, believe it or not, I was a pretty handsome kid. I mean, I was a late bloomer, so I didn't become handsome until I was like 18, 19. I started working out, and I had nice hair. I was Jersey Shore. I was ripped up, bodybuilding shows, and I had a bunch of money, but I never let anyone know it, except my boys. Definitely didn't show it to girls. My boys could never figure it out. I would play a broke college student. That's what I do. I'm in college and I'm broke. I don't even have a car. You know, I live with my grandmother. They're like, how do you get all these freaking hot girls? Because I was always getting these like super hot chicks, you know. And I wouldn't even go just for the hot one. Like she had to be in college or have a career. Like she's out of college now and she's a nurse making six figures, whatever. And they're like, how do you do that, bro? I'm like, because I'm not a lame simp. I don't depend on my money to attract her. I attract her with charm, humor,
Yeah.
wit. You know, that's it. I make her laugh instead of like taking her to a high-end restaurant and spending $200 on a dinner and a bottle of champagne. I take her to the beach so we can watch the sunset.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And when I'm done, she's throwing herself at me. I don't need to give her nothing. So I mean, but the thing is, if they weren't smart and didn't have anything to say, like they didn't have any substance to their brain, it was a big
Mm-hmm.
turnoff. And I'm not joking. I would I would sleep with them once, maybe twice, and then after that, they were so annoying and non-attractive because emotionally, psychologically, and mentally, like intellectually, they just had there's no stimulation whatsoever. And my brain and the top and bottom of what you know what I'm saying are connected together. Like so, in order to stimulate that, you have to stimulate this for me. So
So
I've
you
always
are
been that.
a sapiosexual, right? They are attracted to intelligence, a
Yes,
sapiosexual person.
exactly. So I
Mhm.
was that guy all the time. I was always been that guy. And like so when I walk into a club, it was the nerdy chick in the back with the glasses who was covered up, and it wasn't showing her boobs off, whatever, who was like the book nerd type of chick. I would go, look out, guys, I'm going right to that one. That's one. You know what I'm saying? So I'd hit on her and they'd always be like, why are you talking to me? Like, he's got all these beautiful girls in here. I'm like, because you're the one who got a conversation. Like, meaning I could talk to you about anything. And I'm sure you have some knowledge of things. We could sit down and talk, chat. Like, we could watch Jeopardy and see who's smarter. I mean, that's the type of thing that impresses me and also arouses me. So I've been like that
Mhm.
all my life. And I think with a lot of these young guys today who are after the perky young girl, they don't get it. They are misogynist to a degree because they think women should be care for you, nurture for you, cook for you, clean for you, shut up and be submissive. No. But you know, you want a partner, someone you can talk to and engage life with, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if a girl can't engage you in some intellectual conversation for more than 5 minutes, that I could never date that girl, let alone marry a girl like that.